Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We continue to take a look at NFL training camp as we get you ready for the season. Dan Fates, of course, covers the Buffalo Bills and all Buffalo sports. ABC 13 in Buffalo joins us now. We'll break down exactly how the Bills have looked thus far and what they will look like during the regular season. Dan, thanks again for coming here on NewsWire. It's great to meet you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Craig. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so Dan, I think that this is a strange year for the Bills going in. It's like for the first time in a while, we're going into a season where, at least from the outside looking in, there are some people that are a little down on the Buffalo Bills. The last few years, they've been sort of that, hey, let me pick the Bills as a sleeper to win the Super Bowl. First time ever, they're probably, or not ever, but first time in the last few years, they're not in that situation. In the division, some people feel the Jets have caught them. Maybe the Dolphins will catch them. And, certainly that's the perception on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
Do you feel that same perception going into training camp or preseason?
Super Bowl for sure. I don't think they're necessarily there right now, but we all know how weird and some seasons can take a turn. You talk about the departures. This team lost 6 out of their 7 captains from last year. It's not just starters. You're talking about mainstays that have been in Buffalo the entire Sean McDermott era. Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Mitch Morris, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis. Like, the list goes on. And the team has acknowledged it. And while fans may say, oh, it's so great, thank goodness Diggs is gone and all that drama, they've lost leadership. And that's the big thing. And where is Josh Allen? We're 2 minutes into this and we haven't talked about Josh Allen. They still have Josh Allen. So there is that sense of, can they put pieces back together? And that's what they're still trying to figure out. But talking to Deion Dawkins, talking to other guys on the team, they admit it feels different. There's different voices being heard. Different guys have to step up as leaders. They're being put into asked to do new roles that they haven't done. As for the product on the field, I still think that this is still a really good football team. And I still have a ton of faith in Sean McDermott to put together a high-level defense. And then it's kind of figuring out, can Josh Allen raise the talent of the players around him now that there's no Diggs, now that Gabe Davis is gone, now that you're trying to bring in some new pieces and bring them along? Where will the offense be in a first full season with Joe Brady, who took over in the middle of last year when Ken Dorsey was fired? So there's a lot more questions than answers heading into this year than, like you said, Craig, in years past.
Yeah, and look, Joe Brady had so much success at LSU with Joe Burrow, not as much with Carolina, but I've always been a big fan of his. I thought that he'd be a head coach at this point. Maybe the Bills are fortunate to have him. Maybe just having him for a full season will be the answer because, the additions in the offseason were very menial at best, just adding Hollins, Samuel, Valdez-Scantling to the offense. I mean, if those players are a major part of the team, I think, Dan, that something has gone wrong because they drafted Keon Coleman, was fantastic at Florida State in the second round. Yeah. But I have not been at camp, so I don't know. I mean, you tell me thus far, Dan, is it looking like he's going to have an impact like they want him to? Because if he does not, then we go back to those names that we just discussed.
Yeah, Craig, I was a little skeptical about Keon from his time at Florida State. And I know analytics can do one thing or another. I know people freaked out about his 40 time not being where it was, but his gauntlet was the fastest, and that everybody makes the comparison of Puka Nacua and all these things. That's great, but you can't always just point out one thing that you like about somebody because somebody else did it and then go, well, he's going to be the next Puka. That's not fair either. What I have liked what I've seen is that nothing seems too big for Keon. He has made multiple splash plays at training camp where we all take our phones out right after and go whoa, that was next level. He isn't necessarily a guy that right now has a full tool belt of separation at the line of scrimmage. He has been getting jammed in man coverage drills when they just go one-on-one, but he's got a really good vision to find zone. I know it's a dumb buzzword, but it's true. He can play above the rim. Josh Allen has had to learn this offseason because he's got Keon and Matt Collins, who's 6'4", and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who's 6'3". He has learned how to throw the ball higher because we've joked before at training camps, it's been Cole Beasley, John Brown, Stephon Diggs. It's kind of been like McDermott a few years ago called the wide receiver room the Smurfs. Now they've got guys that have size and things like that. So I've been impressed because I had a lower expectation maybe of where I thought Keon would be coming out of Florida State, where I'm not going to break down the all 22 on Keon, but I didn't think he really ran a whole bunch of routes. It was kind of like, go down the field, I'll throw you the ball. He has shown a little bit more polish and maturity early on. He's just 21 years old, but his size, and he catches the ball so well. We see guys that have late hands where you always talk about like cornerbacks play through when they see the wide receiver's hands go up. He brings them up real late. He's very confident in catching the ball. All of those things are pluses, and it's just a matter of going back to the original point. What can Joe Brady do with it? He's got a brand new blank slate. There's no number one wide receiver. They've kind of talked about earlier in training camp, Sean McDermott called them, who's that spot, the wide receiver room. And he goes, it's kind of like your utensil drawer. And he goes, sometimes you open it up and you don't really know what you have, but you know it's in there. And he goes, and sometimes when you're unloading the dishwasher, you're like, where does this thing go? That's kind of what this Bills wide receiver room is. They're trying to figure out who's going to go where. And when I've asked Joe Brady, and hey, do you need a X wide receiver or this wide receiver? He wants the entire team to know the philosophy, the system in place so that guys can interchange and play on the outside and play on the inside. So there's a lot of versatility there. It's just, how will it pan out? That's what we need to find out.
Yep, we do. I need some forks in my house here, Dan. All right, so win total for the Bills. Everyone is pounding the under at 10.5. It's minus 150 on the FanDuel Sportsbook. This is trending toward 10. Let's just call it what it is. Are bettors on the right side here, or will the Bills surprise some people?
I think the Bills will surprise a few people. I think so much has been made of the pieces that they've lost. They still have Josh Allen, and they still have a really, really good defensive coordinator or head coach in Sean McDermott, however you want to break it up. Even with all the injuries the defense had last year to Matt Milano, Daquan Jones, all these guys, they were still a damn good defense. I expect them to be a really good defense. Again, they may not be as high scoring offensively, but I think they'll be solid.
All right. Thanks again, Dan. Great to have you here on NewsWire. Appreciate the knowledge.
Thanks for having me.